can't believe it, but this is our last session in the trap study. And this week we are diving into the topic of control. Now, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I was a controlling person, I would have told you no way, definitely not. But as I've gotten older and after I had kids, I've noticed some of the small ways that I do try to control things. One of the things that I've noticed lately is that I try to control how the dishwasher is loaded. I taught my kids, I gave them this chore and I taught them exactly how to do it. Plates on one side, bowls on the other, where the silverware goes, plastic on top, and then when they took it over, they had the audacity not to do it the way that I taught them. Come on, guys, what are you thinking? This is how we do it. It needs to be organized. And my daughter rises up so nicely and confidently and says, Mom, if things get cleaned and nothing melts, who cares? Oh, well, I guess it doesn't. So, needless to say, I do have some control issues. I think we all do though, don't we? I mean, some people, we try to control our weight, we try to control the way our family looks, we try to control how our husband drives. I mean, there's just so many things, and not all of it's bad. I mean, we have to have some control in our lives, right? I mean, we have to control our budget or we're not gonna have a place to live. We have to be in control when we're driving or it's not safe. There is good control to get things done and to show us that there's processes in place, and it's healthy. But where things turn a corner is when there starts to be no flexibility. You don't see that there's possibly another way to do it. You can't see how your way maybe isn't the best way for somebody else. Or you start having to have a say in everything. Wait, before you make the decision, can you run that by me? I need to know all the details, and then that way I can give you my opinion if needs to be. You know, the other thing that we do a lot of times too that's unhealthy is we get super angry when people don't take our suggestions. Well, you know what? They're ruining their lives and they didn't take my suggestion. If they just would have taken my suggestion, things would be better by now. And we get so angry. Does any of that sound familiar? I know some of those sound familiar in my life. Control just kind of comes out in so many different ways. And a lot of times, I don't think that we actually realize that we're doing it. Control becomes this habit, and it's so deeply entrenched into our personality. I mean, for me, I'm very money conscious and I'm very organized. I don't necessarily care if things are clean. I just love them to be organized. And what that does is it leads me to believe that because I can control money easily and I have a great budget, that I think that my way is the best way and that people should always have things organized because it makes life happier. But the problem is even those are productive life skills, not everybody's gonna care about them the way that I care about them. And if I'm not careful, I can start forcing my personality onto other people and controlling them. And that's not what God designed our personality for. God designed our personality to benefit other people, not to control other people. When I look at stories and think about people and control issues, unfortunately, I think of the story between Abraham and Sarah. You can find it in Genesis 16 and in chapters 21. You see, God had promised Abraham and Sarah a son, and they were getting older, and God hadn't fulfilled that promise. And so every year that passed, Sarah was getting more anxious and more worried and more fear-filled, and she couldn't let it go. And here's the thing, I can completely relate to Sarah because for 3 years, my husband and I tried to get pregnant, and every year that would go by, I would get so depressed and so sad. God, why do I have this desire and you're not fulfilling it? God, what can I do? God, why? And I'm sure that those were some of the feelings that Sarah was feeling. And so she decided to take matters into her own hands. She said, you know what? I have this servant girl, and Abraham, why don't you take my servant girl and why don't you have a baby with her? And then we'll have an offspring in our family. And maybe that's what God meant. And so Abraham, having no objections, went ahead and had a child with Hagar that they named Ishmael. But if you read the story, things didn't go as planned. Sarah didn't realize all of that bitterness and all the anger that she would feel, all the resentment towards Hagar that she would feel. And she started blaming Abraham, and she started to become angry at him. And then, lo and behold, God did what he said he was going to do. He fulfilled this promise, and Sarah got pregnant and gave birth to a beautiful baby boy named Isaac. But guess what? Those feelings of resentment and bitterness didn't go away. They even trickled down into the boys, and those boys started having division amongst themselves. Until one day, Sarah went to Abraham with all the bitterness and all the anger, and she said, "Hey, I need you to get rid of that slave woman and her son, that slave woman. For that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Whoo-hoo! Ouch! Whew, that's harsh. But here's the thing. That's what happens when we control. Our control leads to conflict and hurt relationships. When we do it in our time and in our way, there will be chaos, there will be confusion, and there will be conflict. I don't think, though, if you would have went to Sarah, I don't think she would have said that she was trying to be controlling. I think she would have said, "You know what, I'm just trying to do what God has called me to do. I'm trying to serve Abraham. I'm trying to provide him a son. I'm trying to be a mom." That's what she would have probably said. And that's what we tell ourselves too. We buy into these lies that if we control all the scenarios in life and the lives of those around us, that we're going to be safe. That if we try hard enough, the risk will be eliminated and that we'll get what we want. But Sarah got the outcome she wanted, and she still wasn't happy. When control gets us what we want, we live in the bondage of what it costs. Feel the weight of that. When we get what we control, we have to live in the bondage of what it costs us. And the price tag is pretty steep. It is depression, it's justifying, it's blaming, it's jealousy, it's loneliness, it's stress, it's anxiety, it's worry. The price tag for control is heavy, and we see it in Sarah. We read it in her story. And if we were to look close enough, I think that we would see it in ourselves. We aren't meant to control. It's a burden, it's a heavy burden that we are not meant to carry. Control ultimately is just an illusion. It's just an illusion. It rarely delivers what it promises. There is no guarantees in life. There is no guarantees of safety or success. Control isn't the way to happiness. It's not the way to freedom. It definitely doesn't get you what you want in the end. But here's the thing. Control doesn't have to control us. We can, through God, learn to release it. I think that there's 6 things that we can do when we're walking towards freedom in the area of control. The first thing that we can do is that we can pray. We can pray. We can talk to God. Now, first of all, we have to be clear. This is not a prayer for you to go and ask God to control others for you. God honestly honors free will more than we do, and those prayers will fall flat pretty quickly. Tried there, been there, done that. Does not work. What this is saying is that we can say, "God, search me, know me. You know me better than I know myself. I may not think I'm controlling. I may tell myself that this is for their good and I'm just doing it out of a love for them because I care so much that they get every good thing in life." That's what we think about ourselves, but God is able to come in and say, "Okay, I understand that's what you think, but I know your heart. I see your heart. I know what's behind it, and I know what's best. Let me walk you through this. Let me show you." And we need to ask that. We need to be willing to say, "God, show me the ways that I am being controlling, that I'm hurting my relationships. Help me release it." The second thing that we can do is we can learn self-control. Self-control literally means the ability to control ourselves, control our emotions, control our desires, and control how we express them in situations. Galatians 5:22 and 23 says, "But the fruit of the Spirit, the things that we gain when we spend time with Christ, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and wait for it, self-control." Self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, which means it's something that is inside of us that can be developed. God is saying, I am willing to give you self-control. Come, spend time with me, talk to me, and we can develop this in you. Psalms 141:3 says, "Set a guard over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips." Oh, heaven, I need this to be my prayer. I need this to be my scripture that I write everywhere and I look at every time I want to control somebody or something. Lord, set a guard over my mouth. And for me, I would add over my mind and my heart. Set a guard over my mouth. Keep watch over me. Help me to stop long enough to ask you, let you convict me of the things that don't need to be said, that aren't going to benefit the relationship or the person that I'm talking to. Show me if it's my personality or if it's something that needs to be said to benefit them in a relationship with you. The third thing that we can do is find the root. Yes, a lot of our control is out of habit or it comes from our personality. But most of the time, if we dig deep, we would find that our control is because we are protecting ourselves from the things that we fear. For me, I fear not being enough. And so a lot of my actions will stem from this because I'm afraid of how people view me, I'm afraid of judgment, I'm afraid of criticism. And so because I'm afraid of not being enough, that's where I try to control others and the situation. So I don't know what it is for you. If you took a step back and asked yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I let go? What would be your answer? Maybe it's you're afraid of being inadequate. You're afraid of being let down or betrayed or exploited. Maybe you're afraid of the unknown. You're afraid of things going wrong. You're afraid that people won't love you or they'll see right through you to who you believe isn't good enough. I don't know, what is it for you? But when we find that root of control, then we can start to understand our true goal. That's number 4. We have to understand our goal. You know, for me in my life, I try to control my kids. And so I had to step back and I had to say, what do I fear about this? Well, what I fear is I fear that they won't love Jesus and I fear that they're going to be slobs. So if that's what I fear, okay, then that must be my end goal. I want them to love Jesus, to love each other, and to love people. The other thing that I want them to do is I want them to be respectful of what God has given them. I fear that they're not going to love Jesus. I fear that they're going to be slobs. Instead of operating out of that fear, why don't I really figure out what my end goal is? And then that's where I'm starting to parent from. I want to parent them to love Jesus. I don't want to parent them out of fear. I want to parent them knowing what I want for them. Because when I keep that in mind, I can start leading them instead of controlling them. And that's number 5, learn to lead. You see, we can't control anything, but we can learn to lead almost everything. Control is just an illusion, and we really can't control anything. But if we set our minds to it, if we allow God in and to teach us, we can help lead almost everything. See, control doesn't produce responsibility. Control actually produces bitter and resentful people who obey out of obligation and maybe a little bit of respect for your position. Instead of controlling, we have to start learning how to lead. Leading is providing guidance, where controlling is demanding outcomes. Leading is influence. Controlling is manipulating. Leading is others focused. Controlling is you focused. Leading is asking questions. Controlling is commanding. Leading is what is going to help us help others find answers for themselves. And yes, leading is going to be messy. And there's going to be chaotic times and lack of clarity. And there's going to be misunderstandings. But if you are willing to work at it, you will help people reach their goal. Instead of having them work for you and meeting all of your demands and expectations, you're going to be helping people grow and develop into who God wants them to be. Help them grow into what God has for them, not what you want for them. So here's the thing. We can talk to God and we can learn self-control. We can find the root, know our goals. We can also help people lead. And all of that is possible if we do number 6, trust God. We can begin to release control if we begin to give control to God. We can release control when we begin to give control to God. Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stop striving and know that I'm God. Stop controlling and know that I am the one that is in control. People are still going to make bad choices. But here's the thing. If God can't control them, neither can we. And we need to step back and we need to learn to be still. We need to help learn to lead people to His throne, to His place of safety, where He works things out for our good and for His glory. It's a place where we can abandon perfectionism and embrace His perfectionism. We can stop controlling others and we can learn self-control. We can stop controlling and we can start leading. 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." There is freedom from control when we enter into the presence of God. We can't be in control and relinquish control at the same time. It just doesn't work. And we have a decision to make today. Are we going to choose to control? Are we going to choose to lead? Are we going to choose to control? Are we going to choose to trust God? No, it's not easy. And it never will be. And no, it does not happen overnight. But freedom, the freedom that God offers, is worth the work that it takes. Pray. Determine your end goal. Start to lead well and trust God. We no longer have to be trapped by control.